Welcome to Movies We Like, part of the True Story FM Entertainment Podcast Network. I'm Andy Nelson, and that over there is Pete Wright.
It is Pete Wright, confirmed.
On today's episode, we have invited cinematographer Marcus Patterson to talk about Days of Heaven, a movie he likes. Marcus, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Of course. Thanks for having me, guys.
So stoked to have you here, man. You just you're on the heels talking about Sunfish, movie you just you wrapped up a while ago. We're excited to talk about it, but we're going to start talking a little bit about you and what got you into this crazy business. Were you a gearhead at heart when you were a wee teen? What did your childhood bedroom look like? Was it just torn apart with old cameras and lenses?
It wasn't. I did not catch the photography bug in high school the way that a lot of my peers did. I actually tried everything in filmmaking possible before landing behind the camera. I acted in high school. I wrote for years. I was always writing as a kid. I never really entertained it as a professional career, but I wrote, I was in part of Young Authors Conference in elementary school, and I was in creative writing classes all through high school and college. And then I decided in undergrad that I was going to be a trailer editor. I thought that was the coolest job in the world. Wow. to take images from a full film and make a 2 to 2.5 minute sizzle reel that got people in the theater. I thought it was such an emotive experience. I always loved trailers. And so that was what I decided I was going to do. And I got a job editing a documentary, one of my first editing jobs in undergrad. And within 2 weeks, I was like, I can't do this. I can't sit in one place. I mean, literally, it was crushing because I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And then I had an opportunity to do it. And I enjoyed the process, but I super hated sitting in one place. Just couldn't do it. And we got through the documentary. It was really great. It was my first experience with a long-term project. But around the same time is when the Canon 5D came out. And I think there's a lot of my peers, especially my age, mid-30s, that kind of had the same experience, that all of a sudden had access to a larger sensor, a pretty cinematic image for $5,000. And so I bought a camera, started a little production company, and we started making we worked locally where I was living in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I'm from Birmingham, so I was in Alabama. And on the weekends, besides just our jobs that we were shooting, I was making short films. And that was where it all came to life for me. That was capturing the image, being behind the camera, sort of being the author of the image is where I sort of started coming to life. So I tried acting, I wrote, I was an editor, and then it wasn't until I sort of owned a camera. I guess I was probably 21, possibly. Mm-hmm. That was kind of off to the races there. We all sort of rotated around in our little community. I would direct one, then I would shoot one. We'd kind of have all these jobs, but it was shooting, having someone pitch a vision to me and kind of tell me what they wanted to do. And I could yes and that. I was like, oh, totally. I see what let's do this. Here's some ways we can add some impressionism. That was sort of where I caught the bug, and it never really stopped after that.
And you've been very busy doing all sorts of short films. That's kind of we see people working in short films, and what's great about it is you've got so many unique voices, you got so many different types of stories to tell, and it's extended music video where it doesn't take that long. You're not on a project for 18 weeks or something like that. It's very condensed, and then you can kind of move on and jump into something else. And so it gives you time to kind of hone your craft and play around with different tones, different styles, different equipment, different lighting gear, all of that.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed. I've shot way too many shorts. It's amazing. I've had
a lot of shorts. Yeah,
really, really fun opportunities shooting these shorts. I think it's a good thing. I had a producer a few months ago during an interview. He kind of was like, "Hey, I checked out your IMDb. You're kind of the king of shorts." And I was like, "I think it was for a feature." So I was like, I joked with friends a few years ago. I've shot. I've had 6 features as well, but probably 50 or 60 shorts over the last 10 years or so. So I joked with a few friends a while back that I was going to be the first working cinematographer that I made my living entirely from shorts, from my
short films.
Yeah, you'll see your IMDb, and you'll be one of the 1930s studio guys with 5,000 credits, and they're just all shorts. Yeah. Well, I want to talk about that though, because I think there is with 6 features. You're in such an interesting sweet spot, right? Because especially with Sunfish, and we don't need to talk specifically about that quite yet, but just the idea of taking what you know about shorts and moving it to the bigger canvas. And then you end up with Sunfish, which is an anthology, essentially three shorts shunted together beautifully. But I think it's ironic that maybe it's perfectly sweet that the King of Shorts ends up shooting an anthology film. What do you? How do you?
Can you guys pop a title third up there?
King of Shorts.
King of Shorts. Yeah, you got it. But I want to talk about how you have found taking the shorts skills and expanding it to the big canvas.
Well, my intention when I first started was I was like making a comfortable living in just making videography, I guess, corporate videography, small commercials locally back home. And I got married young. So when I decided sort of that I was going to like transition in narrative and I had made that, I was like, I think this is what I want to do. I sat her down and kind of, pitched it to her, and she was like, whoa, okay, we're going to, go to New York or go to LA. And she was 100% behind it. She actually got a job in LA before I even got into film school, which is what I had wanted to do. But my entire strategy was like, okay, I am from a small community with a very tiny, tiny film market, right? Like Alabama is actually growing a lot now because of what happened in Atlanta and the dissolution of like Atlanta and New Orleans over the last decades. So a lot of my friends are working now, but back then, man, just really wasn't. There wasn't a lot going on. With the exception of like two directors that just had their team and they were always working. So I knew I wanted to meet as many directors, writers, and producers as possible. And kind of in a short amount of time, because I moved out when I was 25, which is super young. But like at the time, you're like, Spielberg made Jaws when he's 26. Oh my God, I got to get all this stuff. You're like,
I'm already behind.
Yeah, oh gosh, what are we going to do? And so that was like always my intention was as many styles, as many storytellers, doing it well as quick, quickly, I guess. And that's why that's why I went to film school in the first place. And then like, it's been I've shot sci-fi, horror, like the amount of, pools I've gotten to dip my toes in. It's really crazy. It's just been so much fun. Some are really excellent. Like I've had, some do win cinematography awards abroad and things like that. Others no one will ever see. I'll fight you if you have a link. Nobody needs to see those. It's just you get to make a lot of great work and you make a lot of bad work, and that's how you learn. It's just taking risks and going nuts. So just getting to experience all those different styles and learning learning how directors prepare. Everyone's doing it differently. That was a huge plus. Like I'm very malleable when, people say I love storyboard. I'm like, great, that's what I prefer. But I work with people all the time. They're like, I kind of want to see what the actors do before we know where the camera's looking. Well, that means I can't do anything, and learning to work with those styles, is just a huge benefit.
After doing all these styles, do you have or dipping your toes into so many genre pools? Do you have a favorite? Do you feel like you have a natural home base where your language lines up with genre sort of perfectly?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have the most fun when images are super composed and like very well planned out. I really like painting with light, the old adage that, we hear all over and over and over again. But like when the frame is super composed, you can just do some really beautiful work. It feels really painterly. You can get really nuanced with the lighting and down to the last like little highlights in the corner and things like that. But I also love, I've shot some like handheld stuff where it's like barely planned out. You're just running through the streets of New York. That stuff's super fun too. And I think as DPs, getting to sort of dive into, disparate visions is one of the most fun parts of the job. So I think I kind of lean towards classical, composed, dollies. We know where the camera is. We're rehearsed. But there's the chaos of like a handheld running around, barely planned shoot is also super fun. The different sides of the equation. But talking about, turning, and then when Sierra and I talked about Sunfish, actually, we brought up that we had, shorts, you can introduce so many different styles. And there was a little while where we entertained having each chapter have its own look. But we pretty quickly decided that we were like, we want this to, although they are, separate chapters and they kind of talk to each other, we want it to feel like one movie.
Sure.
Early on, before I was even on board, I think Sierra had even talked about bringing on different DPs for each chapter. She thought that would be really interesting. And then the more that once we met and we talked about it, we were like, we want this to feel like one movie. Like Green Lake is one place, but these are 4 stories that happen around it. And that's sort of how we settled on the like specific look for the film that is pretty shared throughout. You know, maybe Too Hard, it gets a little funkier with some genre. But I love it. I love like composed imagery, and that's what Sierra was into for that too. Like composed frames, you know, sort of knowing where the camera is going to look the whole time, and being really intentional with the blocking and the lighting.
Well, let's jump into Sunfish. Sunfish and Other Stories on Green Lake. And you mentioned Sierra Falconer wrote and directed it and produced, so very involved in this. I'm assuming you met Sierra out in LA, like UCLA,
Sure
in
did.
that area. And then, but it was a story that was set in a totally different part of the country, a place where Sierra grew up, out by the Lake Michigan. And so it's a totally different vibe. Did you, how did you tap into that vibe? Was it just in the conversations with Sierra? Was it in the location scouting and figuring out, okay, this is what we're trying to capture with this particular film?
I think something I vibed with early on is that, you know, Michigan is a place of lakes, like Michigan, Minnesota especially. Like there's lakes everywhere, and like they're very proud of their wildlife, and it's just a huge part of life. Going to the lake, the languidity of of life on the lake. But I also grew up on the lake. I was in Alabama, and we don't have as many lakes, but that is what you do. You go to the beach or you go to the lake in the summer. And so I told her early on, I was like, these are the memories that I have on the lake. And this is what it feels like on the lake in the morning in Alabama on Lake Martin, you know. This is what it feels like to go, you know, to hop in a speedboat with your friends and run around and like pull people on a tube on a boat that's not made to pull tubes. And it's like, you know, all these fun things. And so I think I had like true memories. Like I was able to tap into some real experience that I loved being on the lake. And so we talked about that early on. And I've also, you know, you mentioned, you guys asked movies that I'm drawn to. And I don't know if there's a genre that I'm drawn to, but there's something about rural stories. Like I love it. And I think it's a lot of where I grew up. I didn't grow up in a tiny town. I grew up in a suburb of Birmingham, but like we could go, you know, we could play in the creek, and like, you know, I would be gone for 8-9 hours a day. And then I would come home and my mom's like, you're late for dinner. Like, you know, you should be home now. And so there was a freedom growing up where I grew up, that like I have a 3-year-old and like we live in LA, and I'm like, are you going to get this? I don't know. We got to figure it out. But, but that's something that we talked about, really early on, is just like growing up in a place where there's like, you know, there's a boredom to it and a slowness to life, that I think that in our first meeting, we were talking about that, about just how, you know, kids can get bored, and it's like, what am I going to do today? And you just start kicking around, and then you discover a sunfish sailboat and things like that. And so those were some things we talked about really early on. It was just like rural stories.
Yeah. Well, that was the first thing that hit me, that, you know, when I was reading about you, that seeing you having grown up in the South, watching Sunfish feels very much like a film made by a son of the South. Like this is a slow film. Like
ever said to me.
What's that?
I said, that's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. You know, It feels like it was made by a son of the South. I appreciate that. That's great.
No, it really, I mean, it really does have that look. And there's a certain sort of visual language of the Southern camera that I think even in thrillers that just moves in a different way. It gives you a different pace, whether we're looking at films set in, you know, Louisiana, films shot in, you know, off the Outer Banks, like whatever it is, there is a certain look to it. It just felt like home for you. And then that you pick Days of Heaven as the movie that you're inspired by. Come on, man. Lean into the bit anymore and you fall into the water, right? Like it's incredible.
Days of Heaven made a huge impact on me because I didn't grow up watching, you know, I didn't grow up a cinephile. I grew up when I was in like high school and college, I guess, you know, I was the bro cine, you know, I was in college, and you're watching, you know, Fight Club and Boondock Saints. You got the movie posters on the wall, and you're like, I like movies, but I had not I hadn't really dove into the history of cinema. And when I decided I was going to really do this and move to LA, I got panicked. I was like, I'm going to move to LA and everyone knows what they're talking about. I'm going to go to film school. Everyone's seen all these movies. And so I got on Criterion's website and I just went through all my favorite filmmakers to pick the best, their favorite 10 films. I think they have those lists, and I just started writing them down. And I was like, I've never seen any of these movies. I'm so behind. I got to watch a bunch of films. And Days of Heaven wasn't the first one that I like. I just started buying them. I couldn't get them. Our Netflix had recently killed our rental store, our Blockbuster in town.
Yeah,
and so like I bought them, and then I torrented them. Sorry, I just couldn't get them in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So I was like torrenting Truffaut and stuff, which I guess that'll be all right. But just so that I could watch as much cinema history as I could before like really taking on this journey. And I remember the first time I watched Days of Heaven, and I was like, I want to make movies like that. Like that's stunning. And like learning about how they made it, learning about the patience of waiting on the sun, which we did. We certainly didn't have the schedule they had in Days of Heaven. But we there's so much you can learn about working with the real sun, watching the, Haskell and Néstor's work in that movie. It's just crazy that, if you're patient, if you work with the sun instead of against it, you can get so much done.
Well, and here you are working with this. Go ahead, Andy. Sorry.
Well, that's something that I certainly noticed in Sunfish throughout, the way that you're playing with the sun and using the light and everything to kind of, really kind of create a mood that feels, I think I saw a quote from you or Sierra where it felt like old photos that I was looking at. It like there's this tone that I have. Like there's a moment when Lou in the first story, there's a couple times where I think she goes into like the garage or something and she's like moving boxes around and stuff. And you and the team like made a conscious decision to let the sun outside burn out, where it's like you didn't put filters up or anything. So you could see all the trees and stuff outside. It was burned out. And it just felt like that's probably like, if I were taking a picture in here, that's probably what it would look like. It would capture all of this and that would just burn out because it's too hot. And like those moments just kind of like continued throughout, where it just felt like, whether it was the way that the focus was, like your depth of field allowed for certain things to fall out, that just, it felt like old cameras, like everything kind of had that look and the tone, and the way that you use the light to your advantage to kind of emphasize that vibe.
Yeah, and so it was one of the coolest inspirations I've ever gotten from a director. I always go through, going through inspiration with directors is very, very normal. It's like one of the super fun parts of pre-production. Like, here's what I've been watching. Here's what I've been listening to. This is the first time I've been given physical photos. And she was like, she was like, these are photos of me and my family growing up in this place. The cabins that we're staying in and shooting in, there's the hammock right outside. And they were, the colors were super faded. The light it was just beautiful. But they weren't professional. And that was something we kind of pinged on really early, was like, we want this movie to be beautiful. We're not trying to like make it feel, unprofessional or cheap or a documentary. But we started realizing that we loved the way that it felt like someone was just walking by and snapped a photo. And so there were times where we set up frames where it was like, I don't know, is it like too portraity or something? Like, and we'd kind of like shake it up, or we'd move the light a little bit. Just so that it didn't feel over. It's a very well lit movie. I think we spent a lot of time lighting it, but so that it wasn't too perfect. Like, people's faces are underexposed. I think about like Nan and Pop against the back window, and they're a little dark on the face and things like that. And so we really wanted it to feel like someone had like an old Fuji peel apart camera, and RIP FC100, but walk around and snapped a photo and then let it develop. And that was. Having those like physical photos, they stayed on the kitchen table the whole shoot. It was really cool. We would have production meetings like, hey, what are we going to talk about tomorrow? Or what are we going to shoot tomorrow? And we'd start walking through it all, and it'd be like, oh, we're shooting over next to the basketball courts. And we'd be like, oh, there's the basketball court in like 1992 or something. So that was a inspiration material that I'd never had before, and we referenced it all the time. We even took it to the colorist later, down the line. Or I think I took photos and sent them to Nate, our colorist, but he had those as well. So those kind of informed the look of our movie all the way through.
God, you can totally feel it, and just how important the look is to capturing the general mood when she comes in and they're sitting down at the breakfast table, and you've got the big sort of bay windows behind them, and they're dark, and you see the morning. I feel like I just woke up. And that is a tremendous like sense of place for me for the film. What'd you shoot it on?
We were on the Alexa LF.
Okay.
Alexa LF with master built soft flare lenses.
Okay. I'm curious what your conversations were about how to capture the Fuji peel apart vibe with, today's tech, right? Because a lot of times you deal with sort of budget constraint, and yet like we're going to shoot it old school, right? And yet here you are shooting, very modern kit.
Yeah, we were a good like 5 or 6 hours away from a camera house.
Okay.
The closest we were supported by Kessler camera, and we knew we wanted a vintage vibe. Well, we needed really robust lenses. We didn't have the team that we could peel somebody off to, oh, hey, our 35 millimeter went down because it's a little funky, the iris ring, so we need to replace it. So we knew we wanted a vintage look in like a really robust housing, which is pretty, there's so many vintage lens options out there now. The Masterbuilts are not vintage, but they're like detuned lenses to give that feeling. So I did 2 days of lens tests at Kessler here in LA, and they supported the project from super early on. So I was able to get in there, do tons of lens tests, showed those to Sierra, showed how they flared. We knew the sun was going to play all the time, so I wanted like gorgeous flares. I wanted the lenses to really show off inside the glass. And then we just wanted something that was like sharp. It felt nice, but it wasn't so clinical. It wasn't too commercial. It didn't kind of like, we wanted, it didn't have that, too sharp in the middle, things like that. So I felt like the Masterbuilts just nailed that. The soft flares, especially this tuned set, was just perfect for us. And we decided on the LF for one, because it covered the sensor. So we were good there, but it was all about portraiture. It was about faces. And so we wanted to fill the frame with people's faces whenever we were on, if we were on a Lou close up, like what did it feel like to be that close to her?
Yeah. Yeah. Boy, nailed it. The related question is, and I'm, all right, it's time for me to be vulnerable. I hate lakes, man. I have such lake anxiety, like seaweed lakes. I can't stand it. And so the idea of shooting on and so close to the water as many times as she throws herself in the water and you're in the water, let alone the fact that you're dealing with sun off the water, like figuring out how to light water at appropriate times of day seems like an agonizing eighth, maybe 8.5 circle of hell experience for me. How do you manage that?
The water
I need therapy right now.
The water stuff was admittedly tough.
Yeah.
So anytime the camera is like floating on top of the water, that's me. For the scenes in Two Hearted, when they're actually 20 feet below the water, we hired a local scuba DP to go down and shoot that. Yeah. But when it was on top of the water, that was our A camera in a Hydroflex housing. We couldn't afford the buoyancy one that could go down under the water. It's like 4 times the price. So what we had was it's called a splash guard. So it's a bag that covers the camera. It's not really made to go under the water. So anytime it's below the water, I'm like putting all of my weight on it to get it below the water and like get that water line. It's got a monitor on it, but the monitor is, it's covered in waterproof plastic. And so I'm just like staring at, I'm like doing the best I can. I was actually like exposing with, false color. And then I could see the image better with false color up than I could when it was just the image. So often I'm framing with like false color on. And then for some of the more complicated scenes, like the chicken fight scene, I was in the water with them. I just looked at my first AC afterwards, and I was like, "Was the framing good?" It felt good. I was kind of dancing with them, and I think it was good. And afterwards he'd be like, "Great," or he'd be like, "I don't know, you kind of lost him," and so we would go again. But so that stuff was tough, and we also couldn't afford the Hydroflex for the whole shoot, so we also did a lot of our water stuff. Sort of a truncated timeline. I think it was like 4 or 5, maybe one solid week. So at the end of Sunfish and then the beginning of summer camp, we kind of like straddled those days so that we could send that back to Airland C where we got it in New York. But then the other tough thing with water was when we were shooting with Lou on the boat, I quickly learned, I'm not the only camera operator on this thing. Also, a camera operator is the boat driver, Grant Ellison, which is Sierra's husband. Because if he turned the wrong way, I couldn't even shoot her. So that stuff was on an older Ingenue lens that we tested. It was on a zoom lens so that I could change my focal length. I mean, I had so much more flexibility on a zoom. Thank goodness that we carried that zoom out there.
Because man, there are some shots where you are legit far away and really tight on her, and it feels super stable, and that's crazy.
It was amazing. It was amazing. I was able to work with Grant. The first day we did it, I think we did 2 or 3 days of shooting her in the boat at various, like, we didn't do a full day of it because the sun wasn't great. So we would do it like near the evening. So we had that long sun as her journey, as she gets better and better at sailing. But it got to be with Grant where I would just be like, okay, turn right, turn left, turn right. And Grant's an actual sailor. So I think there's like, go port side and all these things. I was just like, right, left, go this way, turn this way. And I'm just going as far as I can. The camera was ratchet strapped to the front of a fishing boat, a trolling fishing boat. And that's what we learned was if the actual motor was on, we had to use a trolling motor because if the actual motor was on, it shook the lens. And so we were like using a trolling motor to follow a girl sailing. I mean, it's just these crazy stories that you don't get in any other job. It's like,
Yeah, they say don't shoot with kids or animals. They never say water, but they should.
Yeah, they should. That's implied.
Sailboats.
Was she herself a sailor at Marin Heary? Did she have any skills?
She is now. No,
I bet she is.
She learns quick.
She came out two days early to so we shot Resident Bird first, and then we shot Sunfish second. And so Marin came out, I think it was just 2 days early to do a full day of sailing lessons. And after the first day, I've heard Sierra tell the story that the sailing instructor was like, hey, she's supposed to be learning to sail. And like, if I do another full day of instruction, she's going to be an excellent sailor. Like we probably should hold off on the second day. But yeah, she learned everything all in like one day. And then we shot that, the very final shot of the movie, we shot that on day 5 because we still had Marin. And that's actually Marin in the sailboat. We were so, shooting a 4K image on a drone. We were like, what if you can tell it's not her? It's got to be her. So that was actually her in the sailboat.
So you had that time. Okay.
I gotta say that shot. So the shot, this is as the credits start to roll, right? And you're very high with the drone, and she is sailing. It's full frame lake, and she's sailing across the lake. And at the very end of the frame, it looks like she's, I don't know, but tacking maybe, is that a word, sailing word? I've heard that. And the sail starts to wobble a little bit. Now, of course, I'm trained to see that she can fall over all the time. You montaged the hell out of that, and she falls over and gets herself back up, and it's amazing. That is an Inception shot. And I curse you for it because at the end when they twist the top and the top doesn't fall and you don't know what's real and what's not, that's your Inception shot, man. She leaves the frame before I find out if she's okay, and I've been thinking about it the whole time.
No, that's
awesome.
Yeah.
It was great. Great.
Yeah. Oh man, thank you so much. That final shot really came to life. It was a local drone operator who had no idea what he'd gotten into. We found him. I believe he's a family friend of Sierra's, Drew, but awesome guy. And I sent him my specs ahead of time. I was like, hey, which drone do you have? He had he sent me. So I was like, okay, here's what the specs I want you to load up in the camera so that it matches best with our A camera.
Yeah. Sure.
And he came back and was like, can you take a look at this with me when I arrive? Cause I just shoot my drone, man. I'm just,
I have no idea what all these specs mean, but
exactly.
Let's do it.
When he showed up, he was like, whoa, there's a lot of people here. And I was like, yeah, we're really excited. And, the shot actually was supposed to, and I'm so glad it worked out the way it did, but off of Blue, just kind of go straight up through the trees. Well, where we staged the scene of Blue and Robin saying goodbye, it's just total tree cover. It was brutal. It was like, oh gosh, the shot won't work at all. We didn't have a B plan to how to end this movie. Sierra and I talked as we're planning it in LA. We're like, do we need a plan B? And she's like, we'll figure it out. This is the way I want to end the movie. It was always the idea. But we didn't have, I was like, if this doesn't work, what are we going to do? We were like, we'll figure that out. So then all of a sudden we're like, wow, our idea doesn't work. But when I started walking around, I was like, yo, if we get the drone 30 feet away from her, if the truck pulls the drone and it feels like a dolly, then it can go up. There's a big hole in the trees. And so we walked Drew through it. I was like, man, I'm 99.9% sure his name's Drew. Super cool guy. I hope he's gonna watch this later and kill me. But there's so we walked it all the way back and through the trees, and I was like, can you thread this needle? And he was like, and he did it a couple rehearsals. Like, yeah, I think I got it. And he nailed it, incredible. The first time Marin wasn't quite where we wanted her. I believe the take that's in the movie is take 2, and we did 2 more. And we were like, wow. we only did 4. We were like, we got this. We nailed, we had it before. And we had a couple different versions where Marin was in different places. And it was just perfect. And the way that the truck pulls away, the camera, pulls the camera back, and then it just starts to go up. I love the way that it surprises you. That worked out. It's one of those shots, like, you plan everything out, and sometimes something happens on set, and you're like, this is special. Like, this is something really cool is happening right now. And that was one of those moments where Sierra and I are looking on the monitor, and we're just like, wow, that was incredible. Like, that was expressive. And that's. We kind of live for those moments, like professionally, my job is to like make a good movie and make my days. And then there's times where the magic really leaks in, and you're not just making great images. You're making something really special.
Capturing.
That was a moment that we felt that.
That's fantastic.
Go ahead, Andy. I just want to make sure we don't leave this part of the conversation without talking about that middle piece at Interlaken.
Why don't we do that? And because that'll be a good lead in, because I want to ask about favorite stories and then transition. Okay. So go ahead.
All right. So we've already talked about sort of the bookends of the film, but right in the middle we get this story of Jim Kaplan playing June, student at Interlaken, Asian student, a lot of pressure to be first chair, and right in the middle here you get to make Whiplash. We get your violin Whiplash. I want to talk about. I want to hear about how your that is a notably different style of shooting when he's in the practice carriage house there, and I want to hear how you guys thought about positioning that in the scope of this otherwise slower film.
Yeah, summer camp stood out in a few ways. Not only was it really different because it wasn't quite as, although it's still on Green Lake. We didn't leave Green Lake, but it's like these super nice facilities. There's not other than the practice pod, it's not like home cabins and things like that. So I always knew it would kind of wear different clothes. It was also the shortest segment. So Resident Bird we shot for 5 days, I think. Sunfish we had 5 or 6 days. Two Hearted we had 4 days, I think. But we only had 2 days for summer camp. And so we didn't have near as much time, as we had on the other ones. Now that we knew we were staying, everything was right next to each other. So it was kind of arranged in a way that we knew we would be fine. But it was a tight schedule. The more we started talking about it, we were like, wow, we got a lot to do in here. But when we saw that practice pod, my lighting team, Michael Tellup, my gaffer, and Xavier Otten, my key grip, like we knew we were going to have some time, some room to express ourselves in there. Cause like it's just an old, you guys saw it, but it's like an old wooden cabin with just holes all around it. So it's like, where do you want the sun to come from? Where do anywhere we want, we can put, the sun can be through any of these holes. Like sitting in there watching Jim practice was when I was like, I want this to feel hot outside, and I want it to be like Jim was great because he played to the light. I was like, hey Jim, so you got like, you see this right here, you got like a little beam of light in and out, man, just go nuts. And that was a time, I talked a little bit earlier about handheld stuff and just dancing with actors. It's one of the greatest joys of the job. I love really composed stuff like wide shots and where we have all sorts of lights and negative and stuff framing the shot, but I also just like dancing with actors, and that was just letting Jim do his thing. Sierra has told so many stories about the casting, and I obviously as a DP I wasn't involved in the casting, but that was actually written as a female role. Sierra writes naturally from a female perspective, and so that was a female violinist. And when she found Jim, who is actually a student at Interlaken, like he goes there.
Yeah. Oh wow. Okay.
So he was shooting this movie on his like high school campus. But when she found him and just saw his talent, she was like, "This is your role. Like it's good." Yeah. So she refigured out everything for the script. But Jim was just he had so much fun playing in the light in that practice pod, and then we got to turn the lights off in the practice pod and make the sort of the moment where he he loses it. And we talked a lot about how to show that too. Like, do we we're gonna stay handheld for those moments. I shot the whole movie with not a pretty average focal, like a depth of field. We didn't want anything way too shallow. But we also we wanted to isolate people from the background. We wanted to sort of feel the lake and not always have it in focus in the background. So I obviously don't remember all my stops, but like 5, 6-ish for the most of the film. In the practice pod, we went super shallow. Like it was all about this, what does it feel like when he's listening only to the violin on the strings? And And we talked a lot about how to capture the moment that he kind of loses it. And we decided to do it entirely. Like, what if we just watch it from outside? Like, we don't have anything from inside the cabin. If that didn't work, it just didn't work, you know. But
Wow.
watching him sort of, you know, snap in that moment from outside was perfect. So we spent a lot of time in the practice pod. That was a huge part of that shoot. And yeah, we had a lot less time for that one than the other ones.
I love the next morning shot. There's a very short shot left in of just the camera on the ground looking at the debris of the broken bow, and there's like a bug crawling across it.
That was another moment that I probably was just as excited as the drone shot. We set that up. We put the violins, you know, put everything down. We got it all composed. I think there's someone off like wafting it to give it like the next morning. And on my exact focal plane, an ant walks through, and I was just like, ugh! Like, we unplanned. Like, if it had been too close or too far, I would have driven me crazy. Perfectly in the focal plane, and like sometimes you're entirely confident shots are gonna be in the movie. That was one. You're like, well, that's amazing. Like, we could have never planned that.
That shot. It's just, you look at it, and when the ant crawls across, you're like, well, this won the movie. It's so many talented people, but that ant. That ant is the MVP.
All the wildlife in the movie. We had a National Geographic wildlife director of photography come out, shoot all the wildlife, and I think that the ant might be the most impressive wildlife in the movie. It's just crazy.
So funny.
That's awesome.
Well, so the film is 4 stories. We didn't talk much about Two Hearted, but it's, of all of them, the most fanciful and fantastical of them, right? Like, did this guy get eaten by the fish? What happened to him? A lot of fun. But I am curious, before we kind of wrap up this, like, where do you stand? What's your favorite? Do you have a personal favorite of the 4 stories that that hits you most?
It's been really fun because my answer has evolved. So when we were preparing for the film, Two Hearted was for sure my favorite. Like, injecting a little bit of genre into this like languid movie was super exciting. And I think midway through, like maybe when the movie was coming out, I was like most in love with Summer Camp, because that was where we had like sort of some of the most fun lighting, like expressive lighting and things like that, and loved that. I actually learned to sail while I was there, so I relate to Sunfish. You know, I love that story as well. But the story that's now sticks with me the most is for sure Resident Bird, because I am 4 years older than my sister, and it wasn't until I watched, I don't even think it was the final cut. I think it was a rough cut, or like a fine cut when we were like, you know, collaborating as a team and giving notes to Chelsea and Sierra. But I watched it, and I walked out of the theater, and I texted my sister, and I was like, yo, was it hard for you when I went to college? And she was like, yeah, really hard. And I never knew that. So like, a movie I made helped me realize that. Like, I was excited. I was 18 years old. I'm excited to go live my life. And I remember, I have very vivid memories of like being in my dorm room. My sister got like wet eyes. She's not like crying, but she got like wet eyes. And I hugged her, and I was like whisking my parents out the door. Like, I got to go be a young adult. Like, get out of here. I moved from Birmingham to the University of Alabama. And I had never asked her about it. So I texted her that day, and I was like, what? She was like, I was lonely. And I was just like, wow. Like, I hadn't, so personally, like the impact that it had on me watching Tinley and Emily in that scene, it's Resident Bird, man. Cause it like made me realize how special that relationship is to me. My sister and I have always been close, but ever since TikTok came around, we like send each other TikToks all day long, just ridiculous TikToks. So we talk all the time. But I had never asked her about that, what it was like, to all. She said was, you were always there and then you weren't. And I was like, wow.
That hits.
So Resident Bird, easy answer for me, because it really woke me up to that.
I just sent my daughter off to college. And so, that one hit the most for me too. Like the whole tearful goodbyes and everything. I'm just like, God, life changes like that. It's hard. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Were the 4 stories always in this order?
Yep.
Like, did she write them in this order?
Well, since I got the script, they were.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, she was very confident of the script, her vision, from really early on. I mean, I tend to hear about films, at the earliest 3 to 4 months ahead of time. She was always going into production in August of 2023. And I believe we had our first conversation in like December, which is super early. Or maybe it was January, but either way. So like 8 or 9 months out. And the way that our industry goes, things move all the time. It's like, hey, our dates are locked. And then 6 weeks later, it's like, hey, the dates have to move and all this stuff. So, being flexible is just part of the job. And I remember around June-ish, so, maybe three or 4 months out from shooting, I got an offer right on top of Sunfish, right on top of our dates. And so I just reached out to Sierra, or I saw her in person. I think it was in person. I was like, hey, I just want to make sure our dates aren't changing. Like I'm getting a couple of requests around that time. And she was like, why would our dates change? And I was like, I don't, I'm just making sure. And she was like,
Because dates change?
Our dates will not change. And it was the confidence. Wow. And I was like, okay. And even when the strikes happened, I was like, hey, are we good? She was like, we're going to picture. We're going to picture. Yeah. Up until the week before, we were like waiting on our SAG agreement, our interim agreement. And it was like, we're going to picture. There was like a confidence working with her that is remarkable. Great. And it's my wife has that sort of like insane confidence too. And so she's like, you should listen to her. It's like, it's great. Yeah, right. But to have someone so confidently be like, we're not changing. We're going to picture. It was great.
It's very much what it feels like. I mean, this feels like we talk about just competence too, right? The act of seeing a film and feeling like we're in good hands from the jump, right? And for this is her first feature, right?
It is. Yeah. It is. Yes.
It is a really stunning expression of competence that I never questioned. What does she have in store for me? I just was along for the ride. And so massive kudos to her, obviously, on this. It's really beautiful.
Yeah,
fantastic film. Really remarkable storyteller. And another, I'll brag on her a little bit. One of the most impressive things is the way that she can take what's actually happening on the screen and turn it into real language in actors' mouths. Like, reacting in real time to either the performance or. One good example is that we did not get when our wildlife photographer was out there shooting, the loons were supposed to be on the mama's back. That was always how it was written. Is that Lou kind of realizes her own mother's neglect because the mother duck is taking better care until she gets away from her. But the mother loon, she sees the baby loon on the mother's back. So, it's like a particularly warm summer. There's no loons on their backs. Or, it's just we never got it. So she had to rewrite the script, actually, very strange that the mom wasn't into piggybacks.
Fit really well. Natural,
yeah. And so she would rewrite her own script based on what we saw. And, sometimes when that happens, you're like, gosh, I hope this comes out. Sometimes it comes out on the nose or, it ends up being expository, which as a DP, I want to do it through images. Like, you don't really want someone to vocalize the problem in the scene. You want to like experience it. And she can create subtext like the night before, like no one I've worked with before. It was really remarkable.
It's amazing. Well, it played at Sundance. Do you know the distribution plans right now so more people can get out to watch the film?
Yeah, totally. So our distributor is The Future of Film is Female, and there are just ongoing screenings all over the place. If you guys plug the website futureoffilmisfemale.com, and then I guess it's it might be / Sunfish, but if you find Sunfish on their site, then it shows all our
upcoming
current screenings.
Okay, great.
And there's still a bunch going on. And then I know that we're on like pre-order for VOD now. So, I think, you should be able to go pre-order it. I don't know our actual release date on VOD off the top of my head, but we'll be on all those platforms as well.
Excellent. Well, people definitely check it out because it's definitely worth watching. Really but let's use this moment to shift our conversation and start talking about Terrence Malick's Days of Heaven. You already talked a little bit about kind of like the panicked classic film watching that you were doing when you, you decided I'm moving to LA. This was one of them that you obviously discovered, I'm guessing, right?
It was, yeah. The first one was, most of my friends know the story, but I think the first one was The 400 Blows. I ordered it, and I sat down and watched it because I think it's on, I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's on like Scorsese's list, on all those Criterion lists. The 400 Blows makes it onto like 90% of them. So I just bought it, sight unseen. I was like, I got to watch this movie. And I sat down to watch it. I was like, I'm a film guy. This is going to be great. And when it was over, I was like, what did I just watch? I didn't understand.
What is this French New Wave? Yeah,
this was terrible, man. I was so bored. I did finish it. I watched it. And then I think you have a choice when you're like, when you're watching films for the first time that are outside of your film vocabulary. It's either like, that's a boring movie, Or that's a boring movie and I am smarter than all of my favorite filmmakers. Or I'm missing something. And it's definitely the latter, right? Like there's no way that this is the most important movie for all these filmmakers and I'm somehow more evolved or something. So I just kept at it, man. You just got to keep watching foreign film, watching, older American film, just stuff that's not so, I was born in 1988, right? So, I was born with the MTV generation and certain style of cutting and, exciting action movies and all this stuff. And so I had just never seen a movie like I've never seen movies like this before. And so making space for languidity in my brain for movies, I do think that sometimes boredom is the point, right? Like there's a slowness to life sometimes and experiences that makes it, all the more reflective and interesting. But anyways, the climax of that, or the end of that story, is that 3 or 4 years later, I went back and revisited The Foreign Blows. I love that movie. It's so good. It's so good.
Quite the turnaround, yeah.
Days of Heaven was one that I discovered during, early on when I started really reaching outside of my comfort zone when, all the movies that I'd seen in theaters, and just absolutely breathtaking. Every single frame you could hang up at the Louvre. It's just stunning. Really, really. And then you learn about how they made it. Everything that Terry and Néstor Almendros went through making this movie. They had to fight the crews on it, to even have people believe in them, that it's we're going to rehearse for half the day, then shoot a train scene. And then we're going to run through as much end of day magic hour stuff as we possibly can.
Yeah. Cram it all in. Yeah.
It's just, I love, especially when you find a movie you love. I like to also go. With YouTube, you can just catch interviews from filmmakers that were involved in making all these movies, and so there's interviews with John Bailey, there's interviews with Sam Shepard, all these crazy things that they did to make this movie, and you can feel it on screen. It's such a unique experience. There's never been anything quite like Days of Heaven.
It's such a painterly film, right? Everything just feels so meticulous and crafted, and all of that magic hour lighting that we have through so much of the film, especially once we're out on the farm and just with all the wheat and everything else. It's just it's stunning. But it struck me on this watch, really it's very much kind of the story of Linda, right? It's her. She's the one narrating this whole thing, the little girl, Bill's little sister. And that's it's her eyes that we're really watching this whole story play out through, whether it's running out on the crime that Bill had committed back in Chicago as they hop the train and they end up in Texas, and here they are, and now they're working on the farm, and then we have a whole love triangle that ends terribly. And then they're on the run again, and she's left alone at the end of the film. And it just it's so interesting. The end of the film, it's she after Abby has abandoned her at this boarding house, she and a friend escape, and her last dialogue isn't about herself or her future. It's about this friend. It's such an interesting glimpse into the eyes of a child and the world around her, not focused on herself. And I found that to be such an interesting point of view that we have here.
I also
Is it hopeful? Do you guys think it's a hopeful ending?
Oh man, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of neutral, honestly.
Yeah.
Okay.
I certainly don't feel dread in it, but it
Right.
just feels like remembering scenes from your childhood that ascribing meaning to might be hard, because while we're we're watching the movie, but all the voiceover is in past tense. So it's it felt to me this time like someone, obviously it's in her voice. It's not like an older actress recording the memories.
Right.
But it's it's these poetic moments, these little memories, kind of little snapshots into her life when Bill was relevant, and then the fringes on either side, right? But yeah, I also the last scene. It's been a long time since I'd seen it. So when I watched it before this too, I was like, was that the end? She was just she really meant a lot to me. It was just wow,
right.
So to me, there's just a neutrality of it, of just remembering oh yeah, my friend that I met at the boarding school, man, she was cool. She meant a lot to me. I hope she did well.
Yeah. Right. That's how it feels. Right. And off she goes. Who knows?
Yeah, she's just gone. And I think, I mean, that's one of the tricks that because the voiceover, and usually voiceover is a stunning antagonist in my experience watching movies. This one I think actually works really well. And part of the sleight of hand that her voiceover plays is that we know that at least for her, as bad as things get for everyone else, she's going to be okay. And so that's why I tend to ascribe more hope to it, that she's walking out because she has been able to shed so much of the weirdness in the family relationships that she gets to move on and move forward where no one else really does. And it's one of the bits I think that's kind of special about this movie.
Yeah, it's a really good point. The thing I did think, and I guess the more that I'm parsing it out, I did track that how unaffected she was by it all.
Yeah.
Which is kids, man. Like,
totally.
That are able to just bounce off of the craziest life circumstances and just later tell the story. They're like, yeah, that was, mom did the, whatever happened, something tragic happened. And then I went to middle school and you're like, wait, what? Do you want to talk about the other thing?
You may not today, but your therapist will when you're about 28.
Exactly. Yeah. These are all things you're going to have to unpack, in your 20s and 30s. But,
The look of the film is I think really we've already talked about how painterly it is, and it is very painterly. It is very, very painterly. But the other thing that I think this film captures that I did not note the last time I watched it, which was again many, many years ago, was the way they handle scale in this film. And I had completely forgotten the opening sequence in the steel mill. That I was just like completely out of my memory. I thought I was watching a movie I'd never seen before. And the sense of size and scale, these little tiny humans with giant molten fires all around them, and then taking those same humans, some of them, and putting them in the middle of a place that looks like it could be on a different planet, that is just goes landscapes that go on forever. The sense of putting humans in really strange, massive places of scale, I thought was incredibly special visually, and that really stuck with me. Even the house looks completely absurdly massive with these people. And again, I'm brought back to Sunfish. You're shooting in a place with big lake, but big trees. Like there is a sense of tiny people, very big things. Does that stick with you? Does it resonate at all?
As a motif, we didn't really talk about it in Sunfish much. One thing we always wanted, at one point in pre-production, Sierra was like, I want the lake in every shot, the background of every shot. And, that's obviously not a direct, like, she doesn't mean like literally every single, but she wants to always feel the lake behind. Yeah, so we did talk about the lake. Like that's what you mentioned, Nan, Pop, and Lou at the breakfast table earlier. It took us like an hour and a half to get the exposure right in that house so that we could see the lake, right? Mm-hmm. Like there were moments where we didn't mind burning the windows because we wanted to feel the sun coming through. But anytime we had like a vista or something, it was like important that we had to feel the lake. See it. So that was, in terms of scale, like we wanted the lake to feel overwhelming and big. Yeah. And like a place you could get lost forever. So in that way, there were some similarities. I also, for watching Days of Heaven this time, I like in my brain the house is an icon, but seeing it again, I was like, that is a huge house, and it never feels that big when they're in it. It's just when they're outside,
Yeah, it's a massive thing in this massive field that like Pete was saying, it's like it feels like it's endless. Like in wide shots, you can still see this massive house in the distance, and the fields just go on forever. But I think that's also very Malickian, if I can say that. It like having the landscape, the nature, the world be so prominent. I mean, we've talked about Thin Red Line on a previous episode of movies we like, and that's something he loves to do, showing the what's going on in the world around these people. These people are always small in this world around them. We see so many pheasants and deer and bison and all of these different animals that are just like ever present. Like, and that's just, I think, a thing that he he loves to do is just show that we're just a tiny part of everything else that's going on around us. And this story, like it's I mean, there are complaints about this story feeling always kind of like we're distanced from the drama going on between Bill and Abby and the farmer. And but I think that's his style, right? Like we're seeing it kind of, again, as you said, from Linda's point of view. So she's already kind of that kid's perspective where it's not as attached to these things. But then it's also like the natural world. And this is just nature going on like any other thing.
Yeah, I think Malick's style is just especially observational. Watching people in these environments. It was watching Days of Heaven this time. I was struck by how similar thematically it is to so many of his other movies. And I guess I always knew that, but it was just like this most recent rewatch. I was like, this feels like Badlands, man. They like make a choice. The universe pushes them in a direction. They make a choice, and then they're on the lam for like the whole movie. And that's like, and there's a ton of time where they're not like immediately running. It's just like there's always like a sense of like, are they going to get found or something? And I feel like so many of his films, I mean, even like A New World, like has that feeling,
Yeah.
So there's like an observational quality to all of his films where you're just, you're watching these characters and sort of the way that the universe pushes them. And then I think filtering it through Linda Manz character's eyes just makes it all the more relatable, right? Like there's a different, we can watch something on screen and make our own sort of deductions about it. But when it's filtered through the eyes of a child, that's what makes it really special. Is like, what does it feel like watching your sister go through this? And she loves Bill, right? Like, she clearly loves Bill for the whole movie. And, watching him make these choices that impact her so much, it's beautiful. But yeah, I felt like it was like really similar to I'm like, there's a real similarity to a lot of his films of just watching people get themselves in situations.
Right.
Very true. Very true. The nature of our the love triangle, the story that we have, we've got Richard Gere as Bill, Brooke Adams as Abby. They're in love, but I don't know. There's something about the nature of their relationship that they won't, like, they say they're brother and sister. Like that's how they kind of pitch themselves, presumably to more easily get work. It's like it's an interesting angle that they go about with telling people. Like I don't know why they can't just say, we're dating, but that's like the story. And then the farmer, we end up getting this. Bill overhears this conversation between the farmer and his doctor about the fact that he's got less than a year to live. And so Bill, as we know, he's very much kind of like, he's okay, like living in the world of crime and everything. He's already killed a guy earlier. He's like, he concocts this plan like, hey, Abby, you hook up with this guy and then you'll inherit all of his wealth. And then we can live like kings because we'll get all of his money. I mean, we heard the conversation about, hey, you don't need to do any more farming. You're good. You can just stop now. You've got all the money you need. And so they would be well off. And so that kind of sets up this story of this love triangle. And I guess as we get to the end, when Bill comes back after having left for a while, he realizes that he never paid attention enough to Abby. And he kind of has this realization like, I screwed up. I should have just stuck with you. And here I am like using you as a pawn in all of this stuff and kind of like ruining their entire relationship. And I don't know, it's a fascinating relationship, but I'm curious your take on it, especially because of this nature where they always kind of like pose to the outside world as brother and sister.
Yeah. So I think I thought it was the reason I think that they're that they call themselves brother and sister is they don't have any money and they're unmarried. And it's like 1915 or 1916 or something.
Right.
And so it's like bad, it would be, I guess, wrong and cause a bunch of attention. I do think it's also like they also get more work, like they're able to both work and things like that. The thing that strikes me about their relationship is the way that it's felt through. God, this is so mal. It's just all through images, like entirely. We experience it more than like, they don't, do they say I love you or anything like that? I can't even, I mean, obviously at the ending, you know, when he says, I know what I know what I had, or now I see what I had with you. I took it for granted. Like that part is the most expressed, like when they're actually expressing their love. Everything else is just kind of like Linda Manz's character, talking about their love for each other. But what
and the like lovingly photographic, like caressing of her hand and laying down in the fields.
Right, but it's all visual. It's never
all visual. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what you mentioned, the hand, like the moment when before Bill leaves and he like pokes his head into the bedroom, and all we see, like the facts of the case are like Abby laying on the bed, just a close up of her, which, you know, she's in the house, and then you see like a close up of Richard Gere's head poke into a door. Then we see a hand touching another hand, and then they run outside. And I like watch that sequence, and that's what gets me so excited about this medium. And it's something that, I mean, we have amazing filmmakers. Like One Battle After Another, they did this kind of thing the whole time. Yes. But I feel like, especially shooting, you know, when we're making movies for streaming or things with like waning attention spans, this kind of thing goes out the window. Is like actually using the edit to tell your story. Like, you don't need to see, like Richard Gere does, or Bill doesn't need to like sneak in and like rub her shoulder and, hey, come on, let's go. Like the moment is close up, hand, and then they're outside running around at the nighttime, and using images to tell your story. It makes it it's such a special experience, and that's why we make films in the first place. And that's what struck me is how their relationship was built entirely just through moments, single images that kind of built into this like larger than life romance. That was really a really special thing. You know, I think Bill's right. I think they had something really special. Like they're like, you know, it's Bonnie and Clyde, right? They're, you know, Abby was like, oh, you killed a guy? Let's hop a train. We're gonna, you know, I'll bring my sister. You know, like there's no way. Like my wife has a sister, and the second I got her sister in trouble, she'd kill me. But you know,
I was thinking, like, I'm an only child. Like, both of you guys have younger sisters. Is this a thing like you weirdo siblings people do? Like, oh, hey, let's pretend we're lovers and hop a train.
Yeah, I don't think that would pan out for me personally.
No,
But yeah, my sister's really logical too. She'd be like, "This is you know, you're making a mistake here.
You are insane right now." Right.
But yeah, that was what, you know, it's just such a, you know, building the romance through, you know, small moments, through images of them together. Like you were saying, Pete, I think, you know, it reminded me, you know, to use the edit, use the images, build moments in your films, and then let the images speak for themselves, and trust the audience. Oh my goodness, I know, like we do you know, for all, you know, for both shorts and my narratives, you know, we'll do test screenings, or, you know, and it's like everyone has a problem with everything. It's like, I didn't quite understand this. It's like, let people watch your movie a couple times if they need to.
Yeah.
You know? It's bold, it's brave, but it makes your art better if you're willing to you know, if there's one note that someone didn't quite understand why something happened, and you don't have to flesh it out. It's like, what does it feel like? And that's when you're making like film and poetry instead of, you know, something I think that's a little, you know, maybe a little lesser than.
Well, and Malick clearly knows that, because we've got the open, like throughout the film over and over, he's got moments where we see entire sequences where we don't even hear the conversation. Like when Bill has the fight with the guy at the smelting factory, we don't hear any of it. We just hear the noise of the factory. We see them kind of like some arguing, we can kind of tell. And then he hits the guy with his shovel or whatever. And it's like, and that's kind of it. We understand. We don't need all of that.
And I'm so curious on a technical, this is the DP brain in me. So they shot with a couple different cameras, because Haskell Wexler came in and finished the movie for Néstor because he had a commitment that he had to leave with Truffaut. And Haskell preferred shooting on his Eclair, which was too loud to shoot sync sound. So the rest of the movie they shot with Panaflex. And in one of the interviews, Haskell talks about he did handhold the Panaflex for some scenes because there was dialogue. But anytime there wasn't going to be dialogue, he preferred to use his own Eclair because it was lighter. I thought about that. I was like, I wonder if they always knew this wouldn't have audio, because the boldness of that. Obviously, you know, you know, in the 70s, you know, replacing dialogue was not uncommon at all with those cameras. So like they could go back and do it. But I am very curious if I would imagine in a place like a smelting factory was that loud in there. he probably shot that with a little handheld eclair, and they just always knew they would either do the dialogue and do all the sound later, or just embrace, the impressionistic moment of being overwhelmed by the machinery. Like, who cares what they're saying? There's a conflict,
Exactly.
Yeah, we definitely get that. And I did think it was interesting that they came back, and I think they had one or two sort of vaguely overheard lines, but most of it was just it felt intentionally inaudible. Like, we're just meant to see conflict and not hear it. Really special.
Yeah, Days of Heaven really shows off sound and image. Film is sound and image. And there's times where, like when they're being chased at the end, and I was struck this time when I realized that they just inserted, little pieces of dialogue. You go over there, this, he's here, you're like, I know that was all just adding little pieces, adding little moments
little things,
to feel like they were gaining on them, and just, using the sound and image to tell the story. I think it's just a masterclass.
Well, then you throw in the music, like Morricone's score.
Gosh, come on.
Oh my God.
Paired with Carnival of the Animals, the Aquarium, Camille Saint-Saëns theme, which already is like hallucinatory, dreamy. And then we put it in this location. Like, it feels like we have kind of stepped into an alternate reality.
It's such a little trip when they go back to the main theme after they've left, and it's because it's just such a little carnival theme sounding, like a little ditty there. Yeah. And so, that's the sort of the theme before they get to the farm. And then we're in that sort of poetic, such a famous score. And then back to the main theme when they get back, and Bill's gone, and it just goes back into the, what I thought it felt like a little carnival music. It was like overly bubbly in a way. So we're using the same theme when they're on the way to the farm, when they're on, and Bill, Abby's in Bill's arms, as we are when Bill's gone. That's fascinating to me.
And she's in the farmer's arms, essentially.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
It's a beautiful film. It's a stunning one, and I love the performances. Brooke Adams stood out this time for me. I generally am thinking about the conflict between Richard Gere and Sam Shepard in this, but this time, like, Brooke Adams and her journey as she was figuring out love, really. I mean, she kind of loves Bill, but he's, again, kind of like, he kind of pushes her into these things, and she's just like, why do we have to do this? Can't we just kind of keep going on? And he sees this chance to make a lot of money, and then she falls for the farmer, and something she never saw coming. And like that conversation in the barn when he's just like, I didn't know what I had. Like, it's heartbreaking when you realize that, is there a way for them to actually get it back? And unfortunately they do get it back, but it's after Bill kills the farmer with a screwdriver, and they don't really, and then they're on the lam again. And so it's like, they can't really ever get that back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shoot, I just thought about something right when you're talking, and it went away.
Sorry.
It'll come back.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, their relationship is never resolved, and that's part of like the hanging chad of this movie, that you're always going to see it there, and I feel like it's just I'm left with such echoes of their relationship that is not addressed in the voiceover as our fair sister is walking off into the parallax distance of the train tracks. It's just unresolved. And so I can see how I think about your 400 Blows experience, right? I can see how that would be a stunning sort of disappointment if you're not used to Malick and not used to what these films are trying to do of the era. But man, the more I watch it, the more I feel like I get out of it. It's a similar experience to watching something like Gene Dealman, right? Like, or Skinamarink, right? Like, it's this idea of we're going to trust you to get what we need, and we're not going to hold your hand. And at the end, if you get it, you get it. And if you don't, we still made something special. And
in the case of John Dealman, when you revisit it for another 3.5 hours, maybe, it's like, I remembered what I was going to say. You mentioned the performances, and I got so the something that I thought was really special, and I experience it when I'm behind the camera, is just when actors, when it's behind the eyes, they're not just saying the words, they're not just acting. There's good performance, and then there's something really magical when it's like deep behind the eyes. And I'm not an actor. I don't know what this is. I think about like, Tom Hardy, Mark Ruffalo, Julianne Moore, these people that it's beneath the eyes, these performances. And I mean, the portraits they have in Days of Heaven, that was something that I've always, the photography as a DP stands out to me. Rewatching it this time, that moment when Abby is looking at him and she says, "I'm sorry." Like there's no conversation before that. She just says, "I'm sorry." And we get all of it. Like the implication, I love him. You and I are over. All that is in "I'm sorry." And it's just right below the eyes. And I love it. I operate my own camera right now. And so when I see that, and in Sunfish, the moment Tinley was saying goodbye to Emily, or Blue saying goodbye to Robin, and on the boat with Dom and in Too Hard, when they're on the boat together talking about those are moments. There's so many moments we had in our film too where you just feel it just below their eyes, and it was the casting process was long, and they found the perfect people for these films. But yeah, that was something that really, besides just reading the words on the page, but like having it, deep in their face and experiencing pain of what was going on.
Yeah, feeling that, like the guy's knowledge that he's going to die soon, his passion to like have this one big thing, like he wants to see this, he wants to catch this big fish and prove that it's out there. Like you can really feel that with him. Like he's there, just like these people here in this movie. So. Yeah.
I think the Richard Gere factor. I think I saw this with new eyes maybe this time because for me, when I was young watching movies, Richard Gere was the heartthrob, and that was kind of it. Right? You go back and watch this movie and realize, yes, he's a very pretty man. But as you're talking about the stuff that's beneath the eyes, if you just stop for a minute and watch Bill confront the foreman in the steel mill, or deal with the just seething rage that is always just right underneath, the thing that is going to make him throw his plate of food, his only plate of food, in the face of another guy, like that's right there. Like that makes Richard Gere, to me, like just reminds me that he's so much more than the heartthrob, right? He's one of the legendary talents of the era, and maybe he was too pretty, and that got in the way of people like my mom, who just really crushed on Richard Gere. But man, it was just a pleasure to watch him perform in this movie this time and get all the other stuff out of the way. He's so good.
Yeah, man. Watch it in that final scene with him. Well, it's not the very last scene, but watching the fire scene when Sam Shepard kind of finally lets it, and watching their sort of dance, and Bill's feet. Like for the first time, Bill looks afraid. Like he has not he's killed people, but he hasn't encountered this level of rage. And then in that environment, just a remarkable, and what an environment to have a confrontation, and you're surrounded by fire, like levels and levels of metaphor here. I mean, just amazing.
Yeah, no kidding. That's
extraordinary
stunning
film.
Well, Marcus, I mean, this is just, really, truly been a fantastic conversation talking about you, about Sunfish, about Days of Heaven. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
For sure, guys. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. But yeah, I'm so glad you guys got to check out the film, and I learned so much from Days of Heaven, watching it in film school, learning to shoot with the sun, learning to use the sun and not fight it. You can get so much done. And so I feel like a movie like Sunfish, where we use the sun so much, like I just ripped, I stole from Néstor the whole time. And so like it was the perfect movie to talk about.
Absolutely.
This one. So I appreciate you guys.
Well, we had a comment from Dana Andrew, who says you can really see the influences of Days of Heaven in the trailer for Sunfish. So there you go.
Yeah,
it's right
Dana,
there.
Get out and see this movie. We'll put the link in the show notes for the they're all over the place at the
all the
Future
screenings.
Film Female.
Screenings still popping up.
For sure.
Actually, we've got another one coming up in LA. We were just at Vidiots. But yeah, we've got tons of screenings. Then they're for the most part, for a lot of them, Sierra and our distributor are there. So come check them out.
Oh,
if there's a
great.
screening in your town,
that's so
come
cool.
check it out. They're always at little indie art theaters. It's an amazing experience to go see this movie on the screen, and then also support these little venues. They're great.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, it was great. Like, it was nice watching the screener so I could see the film. But man, this is something like so visually beautiful. It'd be great to see on the big screen. So, and likewise, Days of Heaven. If you get a chance to see Days of Heaven on the big screen, see that one too.
Absolutely,
was
this little movie Days of Heaven. If you guys catch that in the theater,
I'll tell you, I watched both of these movies on the old Vision Pro on the big screen, and it's pretty stunning.
Yeah,
I know Andy doesn't believe me. Your brain's tricked.
I believe you.
You don't believe me. This is the part, Marcus, where we fight.
That's right. Marcus, do you have any links that you share? Websites, socials, anything where you want people to track you down and follow you?
Yeah, for sure. My website is marcuspatterson.com. And then, catch me on Instagram. It's at Mark Patterson, M-A-R-C Patterson. So the Instagram is not Marcus.
Gotcha.
But yeah, those would be the best places to find me.
Okay,
but I just followed you on Letterboxd, and you can do that.
Oh, I am on Letterboxd.
Yeah.
What's my letterbox? Y'all follow me on letterbox too. I don't even know my letterbox. I should know that, right? Is it Mark Patterson?
It's Mark. I think it's. Let me go back to my search. It's Marcus. No, it is Mark Patterson. It is Mark with a C.
Mark
Patterson.
Okay,
on Letterboxd.
Perfect.
Yep.
Awesome.
We'll put the links for all of that in the show notes, so everyone can find Marcus, can check out Sunfish, and all of that wonderful stuff. So, again, Marcus, thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much. It was great chatting with you.
And for everyone out there, we hope you enjoyed the show, and we certainly hope you like the movie like we do here on Movies We Like. Movies We Like is a part of the True Story FM Entertainment Podcast Network and the Next Reel family of film podcasts. The music is Chonk Clap by Out of Flux. Find the show at truestory.fm and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Letterboxd at The Next Reel. Learn about becoming a member at thenextreel.com/membership. And if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, we always appreciate it if you drop one in there for us. See you next time.